Hello, welcome to Maya 101. This is Michael. This is the second video of our first Maya 101 course, or on YouTube here, a playlist. Again, a reminder, the idea is that you would watch these in order from part 1 to part 2 and so on, as everything going forward assumes you've at least watched and kind of understand what has been gone over before. Again, these are unscripted, okay? So I might fumble over my words a little bit and so on. I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing. I might edit out some coughs or something like that, but nothing too unedited. So it's going to be very similar to how I would present an actual classroom lesson. So in the last video, the first part of Maya 101, we went over kind of basic user interface and the things you're seeing on the screen. We also talked about how to rotate your camera, navigate through the scene with the Alt button and left, middle, and right mouse buttons together, being able to go through the scene like this. Then creating some primitive shapes and starting to kind of build things together. So hopefully, again, you kind of have tried practicing that. Just kind of, again, the idea behind these is that you're brand new to 3D, you're brand new to Maya, and so just practicing creating objects and placing them and making little scenes and so on. That's the idea. That was your quote-unquote homework from part 1. Of course, I'll never be grading anything. This isn't an actual classroom. But, just the idea of it is you take away from the video something to work on for the future. Because you always need to practice. Practice makes perfect. So what I wanted to go into next, this is a slightly advanced topic. But it's important before going too far with Maya to understand that everything within Maya is a node. N-O-D-E, node. Maya is a node-based system, which means everything is composed or created with these different components that link together to create something or create an effect. And you can link these together yourself or just let Maya do it for you, either way. But it's important to understand, and I want to try to go over that now. So again, if it doesn't make a lot of sense at first, we continue going forward in Maya, hopefully it'll make more and more sense as you kind of start to see these things come together. So over here again, this is the outliner. This shows you everything that's in your scene. I have a brand new scene here, which I can go to File, New Scene. I don't want to save this blank scene, so I say don't save. And so a new scene in Maya comes with certain elements here in the outliner that are just there. You have 4 cameras: perspective, top, front, and side. And then we have some default light sets, object sets, model editor, and so on. And you might have other things here too, depending on if you have certain kind of plugins or something like that. But otherwise, there's also default lights, there's default materials, and so on. There's lots of default things that just are created with a brand new scene. But of course, we can add things to the scene, right? So if I were to add a cube, I go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube. You'll see here in the outliner, I now have pcube1. Okay, a cube. And I can select it. I can press the F key, F as in frame. I can zoom in to whatever is selected. So that's something useful just to be able to do. Press F to frame something and zoom into it. So what I want to do is kind of talk about nodes. I'm just going to delete this cube for a second. So I'm going to go to Windows, the Windows menu, and we have here the node editor. All right. So the node editor. Okay, so we're not really going to be doing a whole lot of editing of nodes, but I want to kind of show you something. So I'm going to go to Create Polygon Primitives Cube again, and you'll notice I have my cube in my scene, but here in the node editor, 3 elements have kind of popped up. 3. And 2 of them here are connected together. So there's 3 nodes that are created by default when I create a cube. Okay, and these 3 nodes together are giving me what I'm seeing on the screen here. So again, it's not important to necessarily understand everything about nodes, but it's important to understand that there are nodes, like nodes exist. Okay, and so pcube shape 1 is linked together with polycube 1, and then we have pcube 1 here. So it might be easier to understand a little bit if I go to the attribute editor. Control A will open the attribute. You can also click on the tab here on the side if you see it there. And what you see here along the top of these tabs, each one of these tabs is a node. And I can just pull this out here so you can see them all. So we have all these different nodes, and you see there's more than 3. But you also see there's Polycube 1, P-Cube Shape 1, P-Cube 1. There's also Lambert 1, Initial Shading Group, okay, Model Editor 1, View Selected Set, that whole thing. So there's lots of nodes here that are associated with this one cube. Again, not important to understand it all exactly, just understand that it's there. This is what happened. So first of all, just a little bit of a default here. So we have Shape node, the P-Cube Shape node, okay? And you can see here it's called P-Cube Shape 1. If I click on this one, this tab here, this is showing me the Shape node, all right? And there's lots of things here, we're not going to go into it all, but then there's the P-Cube 1 node. Now this is the Transform node. That's what they refer to it as. The Shape node and the Transform node. You see at the Transform, it actually shows you here, this is P-Cube Shape 1, it says Mesh. P-Cube 1 here says Transform. So these 2 nodes are the most common ones you'll see when you create something new, the Shape node and the Transform node. The Transform node you'll see here has all the information as far as where this object is it rotated, is it scaled, that kind of thing. While the Shape node is more talking about how it's rendered, how it's displayed, different component things and so on. Lots of stuff that we're not necessarily going to get into right now. Now this is Polycube 1 node here. This is, I'm not sure exactly the technical term for it, but I call it the creation node or create node. When you create a new primitive, it comes with a create node. And this allows you, let me move this over, this node here has things like how many subdivisions does your cube have, for example. What's the height and width and so on, depth, this kind of thing. You can play with these sliders. In the channel box, you'll see here under inputs, Polycube 1 there, that's that create node. And if I click on it, it'll expand, and I have the same information here as far as the creation details, oops, there we go, of this cube. Now if I were to delete history, and we haven't talked about history yet, but just to show you, if I delete history, you'll see that node goes away, and I'm left with these 2 nodes. So these 2 nodes are always around, the Transform node and the Shape node. That creation node can be deleted or removed, depending on what you do. So that's a cube. Let me just show you something else. Let me say, go to Create Lights, and we haven't talked about these things. Again, feel free to explore, by the way, in between videos and things, and on your own time, kind of just looking around Maya. I definitely don't want you to like just wait for the next lesson before you do anything else. Go ahead and explore. But anyway, create lights. Let's say we do a point light, for example. You'll see here we have 2 nodes pop up. We have point light 1 and point light shape 1. So it is a same idea here. Oops, there it is. We have these tabs here. So we have the default light set, this cell thing, then point light shape 1, point light 1, transform node, and a shape node. So the transform node and the shape node, for most things, you'll have those 2 things associated, those 2 nodes associated with that thing. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So you have different nodes that contain different information that control different things. You can see here we kind of expand this a bit, and you can see we have this connections to these other nodes we talked about before. That's why they all show up in the attribute editor. So anyway, again, not important to understand exactly what all this stuff means. It's just important to understand that it's there. Okay. So we talked briefly over here, we have these 4 camera views, and we didn't talk about how to actually look through those. You may have found this out already by now, but if you tap the space bar, you can divide your screen into 4 viewports. And the top right one is default, the perspective view that we've been looking through for the most part. And then we have top, front, and side. If you put your cursor over any of these other viewports and press the space bar again, it'll zoom in to, in my case here, the top view. Space bar, side view, space bar, perspective view, like this. So you can just kind of go through these different views. I mainly kind of stay within my perspective view until I need to switch to a different view, of course. But perspective view is what I usually work in a lot. There's also, if I hold down the space bar, you may have noticed this flash on the screen a few times. This is called the hot box. And you'll notice here all these menus and things that it's like a shortcut key. By holding down space, I can get to, for example, you see up here, File, Edit, Create, Select. Right here, File, Edit, Create, Select. The same things. You can just, instead of having to go all the way up here, I can hold space and go right there. I can create a polygon, cube, for example. There we go. Created a cube from here, from the hotbox, as opposed to going all the way up there. So the hotbox has lots of different kind of shortcuts for accessing things. For example, right here in the middle, it says Maya. If I left click and hold on that, you'll see a new marquee menu appear. I can change my camera view from this position. So there's lots of little, if I put my cursor over here to the right, different things. Cursor over here to the left, different things. To the top, different things. To the bottom, different things. So it's all very contextual and sensitive. And once you are more familiar with all the menus and everything, you can use the hotbox to greater effect. But for now, I don't really recommend using it necessarily, just because it's not something that you need to use yet, just as a beginner, put it that way. All right, so we have those nodes involved, we have the camera views. So what I want to talk about now is actual Polygon components. So we have here on my screen already a Polygon cube. So far, for the most part, and hopefully with when you go exploring, you hopefully find out a lot of these things already, just kind of looking through, and they're relatively simple to find. But polygons are composed of three main components. If I right click and hold on my polygon cube, this gives me this marquee menu that appears. It's kind of circular or radial menu. And lots of things kind of expand out from here. We have a big long menu here. But first of all, we have edges, this top item here. If I put my cursor over this and let go, you'll notice the cube turns blue. And now that's an indication that I am in component mode. And instead of clicking on the cube, I can't really click on the cube and select it. I can click on the edges of the cube. So those edges are those blue lines of the cube. I can select any of them, and I can move that particular edge and drastically change the shape of the cube. I can rotate that edge. I can scale that edge, and so on. That's edges. Now right click and hold again. I can go to vertex. And vertex, you might notice, it might be hard to see on the screen here, but these little purple dots at everywhere the edges converge together, those are vertices or vertex. A singular one is a vertex. And you can move those the same way. You can move, of course, multiple vertices. If I select more than one, I can move those. I can rotate all of those together. I can scale them all together. That kind of thing. Right click and hold again and go down. We have face. Faces, these are the surfaces that are stretched between the edges and vertices of the model. And same thing, I can select one or more and move it, rotate, scale it, and so on. So I can warp these shapes around and change their overall shape with their components. Right click and hold again, and you'll notice we have other things here, of course. We have what's called multi in the bottom right corner, and what this simply means, it allows me to select edges, vertices, faces, without having to go back and forth between each component mode. Typically, if you right click and hold and go to edges, I'm only selecting edges now. I can't also select vertices. Right click and hold and go to faces, I'm only selecting faces, not edges, and vertices. I can right click and hold and go to multi, and now I can click on this corner and get a vertex. I can click on this line and get an edge, or I can click on the face and get a face. So you can select all three types without having to swap back and forth. Right click and hold again, and we have this other option here in the bottom left called Vertex Face, and what this simply does is it kind of explodes the model out, showing me all the individual faces. It's just a visual reference. It's not something that you're going to necessarily use for creation. You're not actually splitting it apart as far as the model goes. The model thinks it's still one shape. You're just kind of exploding it out a little bit so you can see the individual faces. This is very handy for troubleshooting. Whenever you're having mesh issues, and you'll get into those, I'm sure, eventually, whenever you have, say, something that doesn't bevel properly, or a vertex that's not being chamfered properly, or whatever it might be, you can do this, right click and hold and choose Vertex Face and kind of explode them all out a little bit and kind of peer within and see, do you see like extra faces inside there? Maybe there's like a hanging vertex off the side or something like this, little weird things that you might see pop up with this mode. Lets you kind of diagnose an issue. If you right click and hold and go back to, say, faces, it'll pop back to normal. And then UVs. UVs is actually a little sub-menu. You can kind of right-click and hold and go to UV, and then it'll ask you if you want to choose between UVs or UV shells. Again, we'll talk about UVs later. So we're not really going to get into that too much. You can kind of maneuver back to these little circles that go back and forth within the menu. And then lastly, we have object mode, which simply takes you out of component mode, which again is highlighted blue, to back to object mode, which is highlighted in green. This is what we've been working in, where you can select the whole cube as a whole and just move it. Okay, so component mode and object mode. Right-clicking and holding and choosing a component type will enter component mode and let you select components. If you want to go back to object mode, right-click and hold again and go to object mode in the upper right corner and let go. Takes you back to object mode. Now that's all well and good, so that allows me to make some interesting looking shapes with this cube, but more than likely you'll want to add more vertices, add more edges to objects, and that's where all the other tools come into play. So we're going to start kind of talking about some modeling tools that kind of help you get started on creating objects and things that are more than just primitive shapes. So one thing here at the Maya Toolbelt that we have a lot of are tool videos. So I have videos going over many tools, especially here in the mesh menu or edit mesh and so on. So we're not necessarily going to spend a lot of time in these Maya 101 courses going over all the tools, because I have videos going over these tools. So what I would recommend doing is go to the playlist section on my channel and especially look in the edit mesh menu and mesh menu. That's where we're going to be kind of using a lot of stuff. Also mesh tools menu. So pretty much all the menus that have say mesh. So mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools, and also mesh display to a lesser extent. But these three especially, mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools, those are where a lot of the editing tools are for changing polygonal objects to do something, such as, for example, if you want to extrude a face. What does that mean? We have a video going over this. Feel free to watch that video in its entirety if you'd like, but just as a simple example, I can right click and hold and choose face. I'll just grab face, edit mesh, extrude. And we get this gizmo here. This gizmo is kind of a combination of our move, scale, and rotate tools all in one, which is a little bit confusing. But just if I click and drag on this blue arrow, you see that it kind of pulls out a face, leaving the original shape here. Just that one side kind of extends outward or extrudes out, creating new geometry. So these faces here were not there before. This one was, if you remember, that one was over here, and I pulled it out, and now I have other faces that are in between. So this particular face, again, if I go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, I can pull that face out further, and again, I have a new kind of row of faces here. I can grab that face down, kind of move it, and start to shape things into, like a hammer or something like that. I can do all kinds of things now that I've added additional geometry to that cube. So it's no longer just a six-sided cube. I can now do other things to it. So let's say it was a hammer. Just really simple. I can just kind of grab, there we go, these pieces. And I'm not going to do something super fancy or anything, of course. It's just for the sake of a few seconds, just kind of showing you. I'm going to grab this face now, I'm going to extrude it, edit mesh, extrude, kind of pull it down. Kind of has that claw on the back of a hammer head. And then maybe this, like edit mesh, extrude. I'll just kind of pull it out, maybe make it a bit smaller. So that's kind of like the head here. And then I can grab like a face here, edit mesh, extrude, and kind of go down here. So now I'm getting like that kind of hammer looking shape. Very bad hammer, I will say, but that's okay. So when it comes time to like trying to make something look good, that's whenever that practice comes into place, where he's like, oh yeah, now I can start to shape things and make things look more and more like a real hammer, not just this kind of cartoon hammer that I have going on here in just a couple seconds. But you can kind of see, though, the power of this. You can start to really modify the shapes and get some interesting things happening that you couldn't do before with just your primitives. So pretty much going forward, when it comes to modeling things, I'm going to probably refer you to other videos on my channel, just to say, hey, extruding, check out the video on extrude. Beveling, another big one. So beveling, I mostly do with edges, but you can bevel faces and vertices as well, and you can double click on an edge, and it'll select an entire row of edges. You see there. Let's say I have these two rows of edges on top of my really malformed hammer here. I can go to Edit Mesh and go to Bevel. That's going to kind of round this out a bit. You can see here we get this little box pops up with some of those options. And we can play with these, such as segments. If I increase the segments, you see I add additional edges within this beveled edge, kind of rounding it. Don't want to go too high. I can adjust the fraction, which is how much of a bevel I get. You know, these kind of things. Yeah. So I can grab these edges down here, for example, and I can, one handy shortcut is the G key. G is in good. And what the G key does is it'll redo the last command I did. So in my case, I did bevel just a minute ago. I can select these edges and press G, and it'll bevel again. I don't have to go to the Edit Mesh menu to find it. I can just go in here and press G key, since that was the last command I had done, and I can start to bevel this one too. So the Edit Mesh menu has lots of different tools. I'm going to actually record a new Edit Mesh video today, I think. That's going to pop up on the channel here soon, assuming you're watching this as they're coming out, which you may not be. It might be years from now, and all these things are old videos, but who knows. But anyway, so you can kind of see here, though, now we're starting to get into not just creating primitives, but actually modeling something and making something happen with these shapes that we couldn't do before. All right, so definitely we're going to want to start practicing this. And so what I've done with it before in my classes, for example, is a lot of this stuff would be like day one of our Maya class. And so after talking about how to model things and change things, what I would say is, all right, now for homework, you know, what I would have you do is I would throw out a theme. Let's say, for example, household objects, you know, because you got to practice. You know, this isn't something that's just going to be an instant thing that you're just awesome at instantly. Most people anyway. So I would say, all right, household objects. I want all you students to go home and pick like 5 simple things in your house and try to kind of shape them using the tools that Maya has for changing the shapes. Like if you want to create a cup or a coffee mug, okay, delete that. Let's say I want to make a coffee mug, just for an example. I'm going to create Polygon primitives. So I can start with a primitive shape, okay? So, you know, most cups or mugs or something like that are kind of cylinder shaped, right? So I can create a cylinder. And so what I would do here is I would always, for cylinders, under inputs, which is going to go into the create node here, go to under polycylinder 1, I'll click this, and I can change my subdivision caps to 0. That gets rid of all the pie slices. And then I can say grab this face, Edit Mesh, Extrude. Now what I was doing before is I was pulling up and extruding out like this, but what I can do instead is I can click on any of these boxes for scaling and just click on it. I'm not dragging, just click it. And you'll notice that in the middle here, what wasn't there before is this blue, light blue scale handle. I can click on that one and scale it in. So now I'm scaling this into this cylinder. Okay, I'm going to press the G key because that redoes the last command I did, which was extrude. G, I'll extrude again and pull it down. So now I'm getting that cup shape or that mug shape, if you will, depending on how you look at it. Okay, and grab the bottom down here, and let's say I want to bevel this. So I'll go to Edit Mesh, Bevel. Okay, add some segments. That kind of rounds this. You see that? I can adjust the fraction here. Same with these. These edges here. Again, you can double-click edges, hold Shift, double-click, and add multiple edges to your selection. Edit Mesh, Bevel. See that? Add a segment. Adjust the fraction. All right, see here. So actually, I'm going to show you this. Again, this is not scripted, right? So I was trying to bevel this lip on this mug, and it wasn't working properly. Let me show you that. So I was adding a segment, and you'll notice that the inside edge here is not rounding when I adjust the fraction. See that? It's kind of staying sharp. So I kind of instantly started fixing it but here's a good opportunity, right? And this is what I would do in a classroom too. If anything ever goes wrong, it's great because you can kind of explain what's going wrong, okay? So I'm going to take my fraction back down to 0, so I'm not going to do that right now, but I can right-click and hold and choose Vertex Face. Let's see if I can, identify the issue. Okay, nothing's popping out at me. I can't necessarily just look at these and see anything wrong. Okay, so that's the first thing I would do though, is first try that out. And if that didn't work, I would grab an edge and just kind of move it and see if that's a problem. No. Let me try just edit mesh bevel again. So now it's working, so I must have undone the problem. Let me see if I can get back to it. Because the idea here was I want to show you how to fix an issue, right? Not just undo it. Of course, undo does work, I suppose. Okay, so I tried beveling this and it didn't work. All right, so I'm undo. So why didn't it work? And you'll see here as I click this edge and move it, there's actually multiple, now I can see it when I do this. See that little line there? That's showing me that when I was demonstrating extruding, I pressed extrude and I was like, okay, here's what I did before, right? And I undid that and pressed extrude again, but I didn't undo the extrude. I just undid the movement of the extrude. So I extruded it twice on top of each other. And so now I'm getting these little doubled faces. So let me undo actually to when those double faces go away. Keep going, press the Z key, undo, undo, undo. Oh, now they're gone. See that? They're all gone now. Okay. So now, press the G key. Whoop. Well, the last thing I did now was bevel, so I can't do that anymore. I have to go back up here, edit mesh, extrude, pull that down. Let me just make sure now that, yep, everything's fine. Okay. So now I can, continue to pull this down, and I can kind of scale it in if I want. Let me redo this bevel over here. Okay, now let's try this. So, troubleshooting is a big part of the job, kind of understanding, what you're doing and why. When something goes wrong, okay, now it's working fine. Like recognizing something went wrong, why, and trying to go in and find out. I can kind of adjust that. Okay, so yeah, here we go. So this is just an example, getting back to what I was talking about, household objects as far as like an assignment goes. So it's all right. Here's like a cup, like a little glass or something, and then I would go and say, all right. So let's say a spoon or something really simple, nothing too crazy, and you're trying to make your objects look as much like that thing as you can. I wouldn't go crazy complex. Like we're not going to make like a computer or I don't know a refrigerator necessarily as out of the bat trying to make something. I would start small, and as you get comfortable making these things, start going higher complexity. Another thing is don't try necessarily to make everything out of one shape. Like this cup here is this one cylinder, but let's just say again as an example, I wanted to make a door, right? A door, really simple example. I'll make a cube to start with. I'm not worrying about scale either, by the way. I'm just kind of practicing making stuff. So obviously this is a giant cup compared to my door right now. But say for the doorknob, I wouldn't try to extrude the doorknob out of this door. Instead, I make a new shape. I go to create polygon primitive cylinder, for example. I rotate this and scale it and so on to put it into place. And I would make my doorknob out of this shape, as opposed to, again, trying to extrude it out of the cube that was the door. So don't try to make things harder for yourself. A lot of my students originally would try to make everything out of one piece, like you're molding it out of clay or something. And that's not the case. You're making it out of these primitive shapes, so you can take some liberties and make something out of multiple shapes. I have a cube here for the door itself, and then a cylinder for the knob. Okay, super simple example, but just not necessarily trying to make it all out of one piece. That's what I'm trying to get at. You can make things out of multiple pieces. Okay, so something like this door, for example, let's say I wanted to put this door somewhere, and if I wanted to have it swing on its hinges, I'll get rid of the cup for now. So if I want to rotate this door and have it swing as if it's on a hinge attached to a door frame, right? If I just click on it and rotate it, it's rotating from the center right now, or wherever you may have extruded it from. It's not necessarily rotating from the side like a hinge. So what you have to do is move the pivot point to the side. So the pivot point, again, is where my locator, or not locator, but where my handle is. So wherever this handle is on the cube, that's where the pivot of the cube is. So I can move the pivot. So the way you move the pivot is by pressing the D key. D is in dog. I go into edit pivot mode, and I can move this cursor, and this is moving the pivot of the object. So I can move it over here to the side of the door, for example, and then press D, D is dog again. And now my pivot is over here. So when I rotate, it's rotating from that point on the side of the door. Now my doorknob, however, is not following. I'll go ahead and duplicate the doorknob, Control D, and I can put it over here and rotate. If you hold in the J key while you rotate, by the way, you can rotate in 45-degree increments. So it makes rotating, 180 degrees really accurate and simple by holding down the J key. Little handy trick. Okay, so now I have doorknob on both sides. But if I want to rotate the door, it rotates, but the doorknobs don't go with it. So what I'm going to do is create a hierarchy. So a hierarchy is a long word, but essentially it's a relationship between multiple things or people or whatever it might be in an order of importance. So for example, depending on the country you live in, you probably have either a president or a king or a queen or something like that, right? So you have like the leader of your country, what's the other word? Prime minister. There you go, something like that. Okay, so usually you have like someone who's at the top of the food chain or top of the hierarchy of your country, and then you have like I live in America, so the president and then the vice president. Vice president is under the president, but above everyone else, right? So then you have, going down the list of chain of command in government, okay? Whatever you feel about government, that doesn't matter. But that's the kind of the idea is you have someone who's controlling the next one, who's controlling the next one, or in charge of the next one, that kind of thing. So what we want to do here is have the doorknobs be placed under the door in a hierarchy so that the door controls the doorknobs or is in charge of the doorknobs. So the way you do that, over here in the outliner, you'll see I have my 3 shapes. I'm going to name these. I'm going to double click the cube. I'll call it door. I'll double click this cylinder, call it door knob 1. And this one I'll double click and call it door knob 2. So I want to create a hierarchy of these objects. I'm going to grab both doorknobs and I can middle click and drag to the door. And you'll notice here the door has this little plus sign. I can expand this. You'll see here I now have nested both doorknobs beneath the door in a hierarchy relationship. Again, that's middle clicking and dragging an object here in the outliner and dragging it above another one. Like I could take doorknob 2 and drag it above doorknob 1, and you'll see the little dotted lines around doorknob 1 and let go. And now doorknob 2 is in charge, or doorknob 1 is in charge of doorknob 2, and the door is in charge of doorknob 1. Okay, so what happens here though is when I rotate the door, both doorknobs go with it, because whatever happens to the door, wherever the door goes, everything that has been parented to it, which that's the technical term, parented, has been placed under it in the hierarchy, will go with. So if I move the doorknobs go with it. If I rotate the doorknobs go with it. If I scale the doorknobs scale with it. Okay. Now if I take doorknob 1 here and I move it, doorknob 2 goes with it because it has been parented to doorknob 1. I can take doorknob 2 and middle click and drag it back to the door. Now they're equal. They're on equal footing as far as the hierarchy goes. One is not in charge of the other, so they are both independent. I can move them both independently. But if I click on that door and move it, they both go with the door. Now that does mean if I move the doorknob over here and then grab the door again and move it, that doorknob stays that distance away from the door. So keep that in mind. Okay? So parenting. And there's a shortcut for this. If I were to try again with another 2 objects, let's make a cube here, and I grab a cylinder. Okay. So I'll parent the cylinder to the cube using a keyboard shortcut without having to middle click and drag and stuff. I can select the cylinder first, hold shift, select the cube last, and press P. And that means P for parent. So now in the outliner, you'll see here the cylinder is beneath the cube in hierarchy order. The cylinder has been parented to the cube. So again, whatever you want to be the child or be the thing being parented, you'll select it first. And then whatever is being the parent or the top of the hierarchy, you'll select last and press P. So you could parent multiple things at the same time. That's called parenting one object or multiple objects to another. So handy for, say, this door or any other prop that is made of many pieces. You can parent them all to a top node on the hierarchy, and then they'll all move with that node. Another thing you can do, I'm going to unparent these doorknobs so that I have them parented currently. I can middle click and drag them like out aside of the door and let go, and now they're no longer parented to the door. Let me undo that. Another way to do this, okay, so now they're parented again. I'll select the doorknobs and hold Shift and press P. Not P, but hold Shift and press P. That's a shortcut for unparent. So it'll remove them from that parent hierarchy. Okay, so another way of creating a hierarchy, instead of having an object become a parent of other objects or a president of other people or whatever, you can group them instead. So I can grab, say, all the pieces of my door and hold Control and press G. So Control G as in group. And that creates a group. You'll notice here in the outliner, I have this node here called Group 1. And inside Group 1, I have all three pieces of the door. So it's the same idea as a parent. It's just now instead of parenting to an object in the scene, like the door, I'm parenting to a new object called Group 1. Now this Group 1 node is itself invisible. There's not an actual group object in the scene somewhere. It's just simply an invisible node. Like say for example, if I go to Windows Node Editor, I'll select Group 1 and click this little button here, the two arrows. You'll see here that Group 1 does not have a transform node, or sorry, it doesn't have a shape node. This is a transform node here. It does have a transform node because you can move it around and rotate it and so on, but does not have a shape node. There's no shape node for the group because it doesn't have a shape. Okay, that's one of those exceptions to that whole shape node, transform node thing. So the group node is an invisible object in the scene. And you'll also notice that at least by default, when you group something, the pivot point will automatically go to the origin of the scene. So wherever these dark lines cross the grid, that's where the pivot will go when you create a group. Now if you don't want the group there, or sorry, if you don't want the pivot point there, you'll have to move it. So pressing D as in dog again, I can change my pivot point back to, say, the edge of this door, like where a hinge would be. Press D again. And now I can rotate it again the way it was before by rotating the group. Again, all these individual pieces inside the group are still able to be moved individually. Okay, like so. If I grab the group though and move it, all of them are going to go with that group. So you want to try to typically leave those alone and let the group be the thing you choose when moving it, so that you don't, separate your pieces of your door or whatever it is all over the place. All right. So scene hierarchy. Okay. Grouping is an option. Again, Control G with all your objects selected will create a group of those objects. You can also select nothing and press Control G. It'll make what's called a null one. It's just an empty, null object. There's nothing there. It doesn't look like anything. You can't just select it from the scene. You have to click on it here in the outliner, and there's nothing in it, so it's null. It's useless. So just pressing Control G and creating a group with nothing in it gives you a null object. Okay, so I'll delete that. But whatever you have selected though, you press Control G, it'll group and create a group like this. Okay, then or otherwise you can parent things. You can select the children, the doorknobs for example first, hold Shift and select the door last, press P to parent, and those doorknobs will move with the door when the door moves. Alright, I don't want to go too much further because this video is already a little bit long, so I just want to show you a little bit of a warning about parenting. I'm going to delete this stuff here. So I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to kind of scale it like this, and I'll create a cube, and I will scale it like something like this, and I'll go ahead and rotate it like that. Okay, Yeah, just do some weird stuff to it. Okay, so if I select the cylinder, hold shift and select the cube and press P to parent. So now I've parented the cylinder to the cube. So if I rotate the cube, the cylinder is going with it. If I move the cube, the cylinder moves with it. Now if I select the cylinder and rotate it, notice what happens to the cylinder. It's like stretching and shearing and going wild all over the place. It's just really messing up the shape. That's not what I want. I don't want that to happen. I want this to keep its shape. What's going on? So what's happening here is because the parent has been scaled and rotated and so on, then the child also kind of accepts that change. And so whenever you rotate the child, it will be deformed. So how do we fix this? I'm going to unparented the cylinder from the cube. How do we fix this? Well, so what you want to do is what's called freeze transformations. Freeze transformations. Because right now, if you look at my channel box for the cube, scale X is 1.872, scale Y is 1, scale Z is 3.051. So there's a lot of weird things. And then this is also has scale Y is 4.004. So what this is called is non-uniform scaling. Okay, so the uniform scaling will be scaled in all three directions, X, Y, and Z, the same. So the values are the same. However, this is non-uniformly scaled, so the scales are all different. So what you have to do then to avoid this kind of weird shearing problem is I'm going to select the parent, and up here you'll notice this little blue icon on the shelf, assuming you're in the Poly Modeling tab. Looks like a snowflake, 000 right there. You can also find this under Modify, Freeze Transformations. If I click that button, you'll notice that it froze the geometry, meaning it goes back to 000111. So the transforms for this cube are back to as if it was just made, even though it's retained the changes that we've made as far as scale and rotation goes. Go ahead and do the same for this. I'll freeze it as well. So now if I parent the cylinder to the cube, press P to parent. It's parented now. If I select this and rotate it, it no longer is shearing everywhere or skewing. So keep that in mind when you're using parenting. If your parent is non-uniformly scaled, the children, if you move those separately, will deform. So before you parent things, you want to make sure the parent has its transforms frozen. Okay, that's the easiest way to fix that issue whenever it comes up, and it comes up in all my classes. That's why I want to kind of talk about it in this video. You may have already even experienced it. Who knows? Okay, so this is our second part of my 101. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back for the third part as we continue in this series.